Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the interesting history of the Khwarazmian Empire. This title first popped up way back in 305, thanks to the founder of the Afrigids, and it stuck around until 995. After a brief pause, it made a comeback. Fast forward to 1017, there was a big rebellion in Khwarazm, where the ruler, Khwarazm Shah Mahmud II, and his wife were killed by rebels. His wife was actually the sister of Mahmud of Ghazni, a powerful sultan at the time. Naturally, Mahmud wasn't too happy about this and decided to invade the region to put down the rebellion. He then placed a new ruler in charge and added Khwarazm to his empire, where it stayed until 1035. Now let's jump ahead to 1077. A man named Anushtegin and Foundation, who was originally a commander for the Seljuks, took control of Khwarazm. Things got interesting again in 1097, when a governor named Akinci ibn Kochkar declared independence from the Seljuks and crowned himself Shah. But his reign didn't last long. Some rebellious Seljuk leaders quickly took him out. They replaced him with Qutb al-Din Muhammad, the son of Anushtegin and Foundation, who had reconquered the area. Qutb al-Din became the first hereditary Khwarazm Shah. Anushtegin and Foundation himself was quite the character. He was a Turkic commander under the Seljuks and governed Khwarazm starting around 1077. He was the pioneer of his family's rule over the region, setting the stage for a dynasty that would dominate in the 12th and early 13th centuries. Anushtegin was put in charge alongside his master Altaj Gumikshtegin in 1073 by Sultan Malik Shah to reclaim territory that the Ghaznavids had taken. Because of this, he became the keeper of the royal vessels, which was funded by revenues from Khwarazm, making him the province's governor. When he passed away by 1097, his son Qutb al-Din Muhammad eventually took over after a short stint by Akinci bin Kochkar. Following in his father's footsteps, Ala ad-Din Atsiz took over after Qutb al-Din's death in 1127. Early on, he focused on defending Khwarazm against nomadic invasions. In 1138, he tried to rebel against his overlord, Sultan Ahmad Sanjar, but things didn't go well. He was defeated and forced to flee. Sanjar installed his nephew Suleiman Shah as the ruler of Khwarazm, but Atsiz came back, and Suleiman couldn't hang on to power. Later, Atsiz attacked Bukhara, but ended up submitting to Sanjar again in 1141, after losing to the Kara Kitai in the Battle of Katwan near Samarkand. The same year, Atsiz seized the opportunity to invade Khorasan, capturing Merv and Nishapur. However, the Kara Kitai retaliated, plundering Khwarazm and forcing Atsiz to pay them an annual tribute. By 1142, Sanjar kicked Atsiz out of Khorasan and invaded Khwarazm the following year, reinstating Atsiz's vassal status, though he still paid tribute to the Kara Kitai until his death. Atsiz was quite the political acrobat, skillfully maneuvering between Sultan Sanjar and the Kara Kitai ruler Yelu Dashi. Like those before him, he expanded his territories, adding Jand and Manjishlak to Khwarazm. Many nomadic tribes depended on him, and by the end of his life, Atsiz had effectively gained control over much of northwestern Central Asia, achieving a level of independence from neighboring powers. Next up were Il-Arslan and Tekish. Il-Arslan ruled Khwarazm from 1156 to 1172. Initially, he governed Jand, a newly reconquered outpost, before succeeding his father Atsiz as Khwarazm Shah. Like his dad, Il-Arslan paid tribute to both Sultan Sanjar and the Kara Kitai Gurkhan. When Sanjar died shortly after Il-Arslan took the throne, chaos erupted in Seljuk Khorasan, allowing Il-Arslan to break free from Seljuk control, while remaining friendly with Sanjar's successor, Masud. Il-Arslan also involved himself in the affairs of the Karakhanids of Samarkand in 1158. The Karakhanid Shagri Khan had been oppressing the Karluks, leading several leaders to seek help from Il-Arslan, who responded by invading the Karakhanid lands, capturing Bukhara and besieging Samarkand. Despite appeals for help, the Kara Kitai hesitated to engage directly with the Khwarazmians. However, in 1172, the Kara Kitai launched a punitive expedition against Il-Arslan for failing to pay tribute. The Khwarazmian army was defeated, and Il-Arslan died soon after. This led to a power struggle between his sons Tekish and Sultan Shah, with Tekish emerging victorious and ruling from 1172 to 1200. Tekish continued his father's expansionist policies. Even though he initially gained power with Kara Kitai support, he later shook off their control and repelled their invasion attempts. He maintained close ties with the Oghuz Turkmens and Turkic Kipchak tribes near the Aral Sea, often recruiting them for his conquests in Iran. Many of these warriors were still pagan, known for their fierce and brutal ways. In 1194, Tekish allied with Caliph al-Nasir to defeat the Seljuk Sultan of Hamadan, Togrul III, and take over his territories. Afterward, he broke ties with the Caliphate, nearly sparking another war until the Caliph recognized him as the Sultan of Iran, Khorasan, and Turkestan in 1198. Tekish died in 1200 from a peritonsillar abscess, and was succeeded by his son, Ala ad-Din Muhammad. His death triggered revolts and massacres of Khwarazmian soldiers stationed in Iran. After Tekish's death, Muhammad took over and led the Khwarazmian Empire to its greatest extent. By 1213, he had eliminated the western Kara Khanate and subjugated the Ghurids after the assassination of Muhammad Ghori. Coins minted in Urgan and Samarkand bore his name from 1213 onwards. In 1218, a small group of Mongols entered Khwarazmian territory chasing a fugitive general. Once they retrieved him, Genghis Khan reached out to the Shah, hoping to establish trade relations. However, misinformed about Mongol intentions, the Shah suspected an invasion plot. Genghis sent emissaries to emphasize peaceful trade, but one of Muhammad's governors accused them of spying, seizing their goods and arresting them. Hoping to smooth things over, Genghis sent another envoy of 3 men, giving the Shah a chance to disavow the governor's actions. Instead, the Shah executed the envoys and ordered the Mongol merchants killed and their goods confiscated. These provocations led Genghis to retaliate with a massive force of 100,000 to 150,000 men, crossing the Jaxartes in 1219, and sacking cities like Samarkand, Bukhara, Utrar, and eventually Muhammad's capital, Gurganj. The Shah fled and died weeks later on an island in the Caspian Sea. On the eve of the Mongol invasion, the Khwarazmian Empire was experiencing internal strife. While Khwarazm-Shah Muhammad II was the nominal ruler, his mother, Turkan Khatun, wielded significant influence. She even held titles like the ruler of the world, and maintained her own court and administration. Her conflicts with Muhammad II might have contributed to the empire's inability to withstand the Mongol onslaught. In 1221, she was captured by Genghis Khan's forces and died in poverty in Mongolia. Finally, Jalal ad-Din Mingburnu was the last of the Khwarazm-Shahs, ruling remnants of the empire and parts of northwestern India from 1220 to 1231. Being the eldest son of Ala ad-Din Muhammad II, his claim to the throne was undermined by his low-born Turkmen mother, Ichichek. His grandmother, Turkan Khatun, favored his half-brother Uzla Shah instead. Jalal al-Din first appears in records in 1215, when Muhammad II divided his empire among his sons, granting the southwestern part to Jalal al-Din. Jalal al-Din tried to escape to India, but the Mongols caught up with him, defeating him at the Battle of Indus. He escaped and sought refuge in Delhi, but was denied asylum. Returning to Persia, he gathered an army and attempted to re-establish his kingdom. Yet, he spent his remaining years battling the Mongols, the Seljuks of Rum, and pretenders to his throne. He lost control of Persia after a battle in the Alborz Mountains. Escaping to the Caucasus, he captured Azerbaijan in 1225 and set up his capital in Tabriz. He attacked Georgia in 1226, sacking Tbilisi, and clashed with the Ayyubids, capturing Alat near Lake Van. However, Sultan Kaikbad I defeated him in 1230, at the Battle of Yasemin. Jalal al-Din escaped to Diyarbakir, but the Mongols conquered Azerbaijan amidst the chaos. He was murdered in 1231 by Kurdish highwaymen, and at the heart of their government was a key figure called the vizier. Think of the vizier as the right-hand person to the Khwarazm Shah, kind of like a chief advisor who made sure everything ran smoothly. This person didn't just give advice. They also managed other officials, set salaries, and kept an eye on taxes and the treasury. One of the most famous viziers was al-Harawi, who did more than just handle state affairs. He built impressive structures like mosques and schools. Unfortunately, his life ended tragically when he was killed by a group known as the Shia Ismailis. Another important role in the empire was held by someone called the senior Hajib. This position was often filled by members of the Turkic nobility, and the Hajib acted as a personal assistant to the Shah, handling matters related to the royal family. There could be multiple Hajibs, each carrying out special instructions from the Sultan. These roles highlight how complex the administration of the empire was, with layers of people ensuring it functioned day to day. Now, let's talk about the cities that served as the empire's capitals. The first major capital was Gurganj, which is sometimes spelled Urganj. If you were alive back then and visited this city, you'd probably agree with Yaqut al-Hamawi, a traveler who said, "I've never seen a city greater, richer, or more beautiful than Gurganj." Another writer, al-Qazvini, described it almost poetically, saying angels watched over the city like it was a bride in her groom's house. It wasn't just beautiful though, it was bustling with skilled artisans. Blacksmiths, carpenters, and ivory carvers thrived there, and workshops produced luxurious silk. Later on, cities like Samarkand, Ghazna, and Tabriz also became important centers for the empire. The people living in the Khwarazmian Empire came from different backgrounds. Most were either settled Iranians or semi-nomadic Turks. What's interesting is that while there were many large cities, the overall population wasn't huge compared to the vast land the empire covered. Historians estimate around 5 million people lived there before the Mongols invaded in 1220. That might sound like a lot, but spread across such a massive area, it wasn't densely populated. Some of the biggest cities had populations ranging from 520,000 to 850,000 people combined. Even though the Khwarazm Shahs were of Turkic origin, Persian culture heavily influenced the empire. They adopted Sunni Islam and embraced Persian traditions, especially in places like Khorasan, which had some of their richest cities. But the empire still carried traces of its Turkic roots. For example, the military mostly consisted of Turks, while the administrative side leaned heavily on Persian practices. In everyday life, Persian was the dominant language spoken in the big cities, and it was also the official language of the government. Arabic, on the other hand, was mainly used for scholarly work, things like science, philosophy, and theology. Meanwhile, the ruling family spoke a Turkic language at home, specifically Kipchak Turkic, or Oghuz, thanks to the legacy of the Seljuks. Artistically, the Khwarazmians left behind some remarkable creations, particularly in ceramics. One style, called Minai, became iconic during their rule. These finely decorated pieces were crafted in Kashan, especially in the decades leading up to the Mongol invasion. Some of the best examples of stone paste pottery can be traced back to the Khwarazmian era, after the decline of the Seljuks. This art form flourished between the late 12th and early 13th centuries, with dated pieces ranging from 1186 to 1224. Alongside these colorful ceramics, lusterware, a technique that gave pottery a shiny metallic finish, also gained popularity. When it came to defending the empire, the Khwarazmian army relied heavily on cavalry, mostly made up of Turkic warriors. While militias existed in the major cities, they weren't very well trained or equipped. With roughly 700,000 people living in the largest urban areas, there were plenty of able-bodied men who could fight, but only a small fraction joined formal militias. After the Mongol invasion, many surviving Khwarazmians found new lives as mercenaries. particularly in northern Iraq. Followers of Jalal ad-Din remained loyal even after his death, and continued raiding regions like Jazira and Syria under the name Khwarazmiya. Eventually, they were hired by the Ayyubid Sultan as Salih Ayyub in Egypt to fight against his uncle. In 1244, the Khwarazmiya played a pivotal role in capturing Jerusalem from the Crusaders. On July 11th, they stormed the city, and by August 23rd, the Tower of David had fallen. The Christian population was expelled, marking a turning point in history. This event sparked calls for what would become the Seventh Crusade, though the Crusaders would never regain control of Jerusalem. Afterward, the Khwarazmian forces joined the Ayyubids in another major battle near Gaza on October 17, 1244. Known as the Battle of Laforbi, it wiped out much of the remaining Crusader army, with about 1,200 knights losing their lives. This marked one of the largest battles involving the Crusaders since the devastating loss at the Horns of Hattin in 1187.